Reality as you know it is only the surface. Beneath the veil of the everyday, ancient truths preserved by hidden societies have shaped entire civilizations, and they still influence the world today. For millennia, secret teachings were passed only to initiates. They spoke about the soul, the universe, destiny, and the invisible power that connects all things. These mysteries live in religions, sacred symbols, rituals, and doctrines that have crossed the ages, and now they are about to surface again. Much of what was concealed, silenced, or distorted is coming back into the light. And the reason? The time has come, the time of awakening. You are about to come into contact with knowledge that can transform your view of life, the world, and yourself. This is a journey through the ancient mysteries, secret orders, and occult doctrines that uncover what has always been waiting for you, your true spiritual power. Before we continue, like this video, share it with those who feel this inner call, and subscribe to the Mystic Authority channel. Here, every revelation is a step on the path of your ascension. Now, take a deep breath, because the truth is about to be revealed, and it could change everything. The world has always been divided into two great groups: those who seek to understand the deeper purpose of existence, and those who remain asleep, trapped in routine and materialism. This division is not just intellectual or social, it is spiritual. On one side, there are those who feel an inner calling, a longing for something greater than the appearances of life. On the other are those who reject that calling, bound by the illusion of the senses and worldly distractions. The ancient sages knew that truth cannot be given equally to all, so they split their teachings into two levels: the exoteric, for the common people, with symbolic and surface-level language, and the esoteric, for the initiates, holding the pure essence of spiritual wisdom. This distinction still exists today, and it is the key to understanding why some awaken while others remain lost, even when facing the same truths. Spiritual maturity is not measured by age or academic knowledge, but by the ability to see life deeply, to find meaning in pain, in cycles, and in the strange coincidences the universe constantly places before us. The initiates are not superior, they are simply more willing to face the truth with responsibility. Those who remain unconscious need guides, simple words, almost childlike language, until they're ready to see beyond the veil. This division is not a judgment, but a reminder. Awakening is a choice, and those who choose to go deeper, like you, are aligning themselves with the path of initiation, a path that has always existed, even in the darkest of times. The ancient mysteries were the cradle of deep spiritual knowledge that shaped entire civilizations. Long before the formalization of modern religions, there were initiatic schools where truths about the soul, the cycles of nature, the power of symbols, and the origin of the universe were taught in sacred silence. These schools were not public institutions, they were sanctuaries of silence, hidden temples where only the prepared could enter the halls of hidden wisdom. In these traditions, the great myths and gods of ancient cultures were not seen as literal beings, but as archetypes, living personifications of universal forces and spiritual laws. Isis, Osiris, Mithras, Cybele, Dionysus. Each represented an inner process of the soul, the death of the ego, the rebirth of spirit, sacrifice for light, and the ascent of consciousness. To the untrained eye, these cults looked like idol worship, but to the wise, every ritual held a metaphysical code. The gods were keys, the temples were maps. The goal was never external worship, it was the awakening of inner power. Wisdom was passed through sacred dramas, symbols, music, hidden geometries, and ritual trials. Nothing was given in common words. Everything required effort, purification, and inner vigilance. It was a training of the soul to withstand the radiance of truth. The existence of these mysteries reveals something powerful. True spiritual knowledge was never lost, only protected. And everyone who walks the path of awakening today is, in essence, undergoing the same initiation that thousands once lived in the ancient temples of Greece, Egypt, Persia, Gaul, and beyond. The secret schools of antiquity were true centers of sacred wisdom. They were known as the mysteries, not because they selfishly hid knowledge, but because they protected truths that required maturity and responsibility to understand. These schools didn't create religious followers. They shaped sages, healers, spiritual leaders, and guides of humanity. Among the most renowned were the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece, the rites of Isis in Egypt, the Orphic initiations, the Mithraic cults in Rome, and the doctrines of the Druids in Celtic lands. All of them demanded purification, silence, and trials before any revelation was given. Initiation was a turning point. The initiate would symbolically die to the profane world and be reborn into spiritual truth. Many rituals included physical, emotional, and psychic trials, darkness, mazes, simulations of death, and even symbolic burials, from which the initiate would emerge transformed and reborn. Great names in history were initiated into these mysteries. Plato, Pythagoras, Socrates, and many other masters of ancient science and philosophy were all formed within these schools. It's no coincidence their ideas still shape the world to this day. What they knew went beyond rational logic. It embraced the invisible mechanics of the soul, energy, and the cosmos. This sacred knowledge was always transmitted orally, from master to disciple, heart to heart. Nothing was written, because the language of spirit does not fit into common words. One had to see with the eyes of the soul, feel with intuition, and recognize with an awakened consciousness. These schools never vanished. They changed form, migrated into new contexts, and even today, they influence traditions like alchemy, esotericism, Kabbalah, and above all, Freemasonry. Freemasonry, as we know it today, is a symbolic heir of the ancient mysteries. Though wrapped in rituals, symbols, and degrees, its true essence lies in that same timeless pursuit: the light of spirit, mastery over the ego, and the crafting of a more whole and awakened human being. Many Masonic rituals echo the initiatory trials once faced in the old esoteric schools. The symbolic degrees, apprentice, fellowcraft, and master, mirror the stages of purification, illumination, and realization that initiates of Eleusis, the Druids, and Mithras also journeyed through. This isn't just a hierarchical sequence, it's a spiritual map, the awakening of consciousness, the refinement of the soul, and the union with the divine. The symbols within Freemasonry, like the compass, the square, Jacob's ladder, the all-seeing eye, and the temple under construction are echoes of far older teachings. They all point to one truth: inner transformation is sacred work. This temple is not of stone, but a sanctuary of virtue built within the heart of each seeker. What makes Freemasonry unique is its bridge between the modern world and the arcane traditions. It is a living thread that still carries the breath of the mysteries, even in an age clouded by materialism and doubt. Though not all its members grasp the full symbolic depth of what they perform, the structure is designed to safeguard, even in silence, the keys to spiritual awakening. To recognize this influence is to understand the mysteries were never erased. They have simply transformed. And for those with eyes to see, every symbol, every rite, and every sacred word carries the light of ancient knowledge, awaiting the right moment to reveal itself again to humankind. The story of secret societies is also the story of human decline. Whenever virtue faded and selfishness, greed, and lust took hold of civilizations, the mysteries, once pure and sacred, were corrupted. What was once a path for the elevation of the soul became a tool for manipulation, power, and vanity. Over time, many of these schools were infiltrated by the unworthy, individuals seeking only worldly power. Rituals lost their meaning, symbols became hollow, temples turned into theaters of empty spectacle. Sacred magic gave way to vulgar sorcery, and where true initiation once flourished, superstition and illusion took its place. This fall was no accident. It reflects a universal law. No institution can rise above the consciousness of its members. When hearts grow impure, even the highest wisdom becomes distorted. Thus, the mysteries, in many cases, were reduced to shadows of their former selves, their secrets forgotten, their temples abandoned, their symbols dismissed. Yet, not all was lost. Amid the decay, a few true initiates, quiet and loyal to the light, preserved the hidden flame. In silence, in small circles, they kept the essence of sacred knowledge alive, guarding it from corruption, until the time of spiritual rebirth would come. That time is now. The moral collapse of the modern world is giving rise to a new longing for meaning, purpose, and transcendence. Truth calls again, not as dogma, but as living wisdom. And those who hear the call are answering the same invitation that once echoed in the ancient halls of the mysteries: to purify, to rise, to awaken. At the foundation of nearly all ancient spiritual traditions lies the veneration of the sun, not merely as a physical star, but as the supreme symbol of divine consciousness. The sun represented the light that dispels the darkness of ignorance, the spirit that animates all life, the ordering principle of the universe. It was the heart of the heavens and the mirror of the divine spark within the human being. The gods of ancient civilizations were archetypal representations of this solar truth. They did not exist as literal figures, but as symbolic reflections of the inner processes of the soul. Mithras, Osiris, Horus, Bacchus, Cybele, Persephone, all were personifications of the cosmic forces working both within and beyond us. Each myth told, in veiled language, the journey of the soul: birth, death, resurrection, ascension. The story of the dying and reborn sun god, present across many cultures, reveals the path of inner awakening. The sun rises, shines, declines, dies in winter, and is reborn in spring. This cycle mirrors the soul's descent into matter, the forgetting of truth, the inner struggle, and finally the rediscovery of the inner light. It is the drama of the human soul, written in the stars. These myths were not created to entertain, they were crafted to educate. Through imagery, they taught what words could not convey. The solar ceremonies of the mysteries, with their rituals of symbolic death and rebirth, prepared the initiate to die to the ego and be reborn to the higher self. The religion of the sun was not idolatry, it was spiritual science, a map of the invisible. And that is why, even after centuries of repression and forgetfulness, its symbols still live. The halo of the saints, the birth of the Savior at the solstice, the cross as the emblem of the solar axis. All of these echo the ancient wisdom, still calling us to awaken to our true divine nature. Among the initiatic traditions of the West, the Druidic mysteries stand out as one of the most enigmatic and powerful expressions of ancestral wisdom. Originating in the ancient forests of Brittany and Gaul, the Druids were more than priests. They were sages, astronomers, healers, philosophers, and magicians, guiding their communities through a deep spiritual and naturalistic knowledge. The Druidic tradition was structured in degrees of wisdom. The Ovates, clad in green, studied the sciences of nature, healing, and divination. The Bards, dressed in blue, were the sacred poets and musicians, guardians of oral tradition. They preserved and transmitted the ancient teachings. At the highest level stood the Druids themselves, robed in white, symbolizing purity and the sun's light. They were the ones who conducted sacred rituals, rendered judgments, and taught the hidden mysteries of life and death. Druidic teachings were never written down. All knowledge was passed orally in secret gatherings deep within forests and shadowed caves. It could take 20 years for a student to fully absorb the teachings, because the knowledge was not merely intellectual, it was experiential. Every symbol, every plant, every star held a power, a vibration, and a message from the spirit world. Nature was their temple. The oak, sacred tree of the Druids, represented the connection between heaven and earth. The mistletoe, harvested through precise rituals, was believed to be a condenser of spiritual light. Animals, stones, rivers, and the stars above, all were alive, conscious, and deeply symbolic. Druidic spirituality was a celebration of the sacred within all forms of life. More than a belief system, the Druidic mysteries were a path of transformation. The neophyte, through trials of initiation, learned to master instincts, align with the rhythms of nature, and recognize the eternal nature of the soul. Death was merely a transition, reincarnation, an opportunity for growth and sacred remembering. These ancient truths survive in fragments, hidden in legends, folkloric rites, and the whispers of oral tradition. Yet their essence remains alive, awaiting those who feel the call of the inner forest, where the rhythm of the drum and the whisper of leaves still reveal ancient secrets to those who know how to listen. The wisdom of the Druids was not confined to the spiritual realm. It also encompassed areas we now call science, medicine, and energetic psychology. For the Druids, everything in the universe was connected by an invisible force, a kind of astral light or vital energy flowing between nature, the stars, and the human soul. Understanding and manipulating this force was seen as the true path to spiritual power. They mastered the use of medicinal plants with such refinement that many of the remedies used in modern herbalism still have roots in their ancient knowledge. Herbs like mistletoe, willow, thistle, and even sacred mushrooms were used not only to heal the body, but to open the channels of spiritual perception. Yet the use of these substances was never recreational. It was sacred, ceremonial, and always guided by experienced priests. Magnetism was another living practice. The Druids believed that the human body radiated energy, and that this energy could be channeled, harmonized, and intensified. Through amulets, stones, and specific rituals, they acted as energetic healers, clearing blockages and restoring inner balance. Instruments like stone serpents, staffs, mirrors, and solar discs were part of their magical tools. Astrology also played an essential role. They closely observed the movements of the stars, knowing that the sky reflected the processes of the soul. The positions of the sun, moon, and constellations marked ideal times for healing, initiations, and rituals. Time was not seen as linear, but as a sacred circle filled with energetic portals, like the solstices and equinoxes, moments of deep cosmic connection. Magic, to the Druids, was the science of will applied with wisdom. It involved no tricks or illusions, but the art of aligning mind, heart, and nature into a single stream of intent. They knew the universe responded to focused thought, and that words, gestures, and symbols held creative power when used with awareness. Today, much of this knowledge is dismissed as superstition or folklore. Yet as modern science begins to rediscover energy fields, plant intelligence, and the influence of the stars on human behavior, it becomes ever more evident that the Druids were far ahead of their time, or perhaps in tune with a time still to come. The time when science and spirit meet once again. The true initiation has always been a process of death and rebirth. In the ancient schools, the initiate was required to symbolically die to their old identity, full of vices, illusions, and limitations, only to be reborn as a new being, enlightened, conscious, and aligned with their divine essence. This journey was not merely ritualistic, it was profoundly inward. In the Druidic mysteries, for instance, one of the most symbolic rites was known as the living burial. The candidate would be placed inside a coffin or a dark chamber, the tomb of the ego. There they would remain for hours, sometimes days, in absolute silence and darkness, confronting their fears, shadows, and deepest memories. Upon emerging, they were spiritually reborn, like one returning from the land of the dead with new vision. Another ritual, described in ancient records, was the glass boat, a symbolic crossing over the dark sea of unconsciousness. In it, the neophyte faced uncertainty, solitude, and abandonment, essential elements for the birth of a new consciousness. This process taught them to trust the unseen wisdom of life, surrendering to the divine flow and letting go of the ego's illusory control. This spiritual transformation was always accompanied by trials. The initiate had to prove their courage, their faith, their patience, and above all, their surrender. Each obstacle overcome represented the transcendence of the lower self. Each step dispelled ignorance and revealed more light. The final goal was not to become special, but to become true. The initiate awakened to the reality that they were part of the whole, a conscious fragment of the creative source, able to act with wisdom, compassion, and purpose in the world. They became a servant of the light, a mediator between the visible and the invisible. These metaphors, present in the mysteries of all traditions, Egyptian, Greek, Druidic, Persian, are not merely symbolic. They reveal that every human being at some point in life embarks on this same initiatory journey. It may come through a crisis, a loss, an illness, or a profound inner awakening. When that moment arrives, the soul begins to remember who it is, and that is when the true initiation begins. Among all the mysteries of antiquity, the rites of Mithras stand out as one of the most powerful and influential traditions of the ancient world. Born in Persia and fervently embraced by the Roman Empire, the cult of Mithras spread across Europe, especially among soldiers who saw in this solar deity a symbol of courage, loyalty, and spiritual transcendence. Mithras was more than a god. He was the archetype of the cosmic mediator, positioned between Ormuzd, the spirit of light, and Ahriman, the force of darkness. He embodied the divine intelligence capable of harmonizing opposites. His mission was clear: to help humanity overcome inner darkness and return to the original light. He was the spiritual warrior, the unconquered sun, who defeated darkness not by brute strength, but by mastery of the soul. Initiates in the Mithraic mysteries advanced through stages of spiritual elevation. In secret ceremonies held in caves, silence, symbolism, and physical trials composed a sacred theater of transformation. The candidate received a cloak adorned with the signs of the zodiac, faced challenges that represented their vices, and after overcoming their inner beasts, was declared reborn. The initiation transformed them into a lion, a being marked with the cross of eternity upon their forehead. The central myth was the sacrifice of the bull. Mithras, kneeling over the cosmic bull, drove his sword into it, and from the blood that flowed sprang plants, life, and fertility. This act symbolized the divine surrender of the ego so that the spirit might blossom. It was the total offering to a higher will, the sacrifice of primal instinct to birth luminous consciousness. The parallels with Christianity are many: the birth of Mithras in a grotto on December 25th, the presence of shepherds, the sacred meal, the battle of light and dark, the final judgment, and resurrection. Many scholars affirm that early Christianity drank deeply from the Mithric well, adapting its symbols and rites into their own practices. And though the cult of Mithras was overshadowed by the rise of the Church, its spiritual message remains intact, a call to awaken the inner light. Today, when we speak of overcoming, of transmutation, of spiritual rebirth, we are, consciously or not, echoing the ancestral rites of Mithras. Mithras loves on, not as an external god, but as an eternal symbol of the soul's struggle to free itself from matter and return to its divine origin. The ancient sages understood something that still eludes the modern rational mind: the power of symbols. To them, symbols were not mere decorations or artistic expressions. They were living portals of consciousness, charged with energy, vibration, and hidden meaning. Each shape, each geometry, each spiritual emblem held the power to awaken the deepest layers of the soul. Take the cross, for example. Found in Egyptian, Druidic, and Christian traditions, It symbolizes the union of heaven and earth, spirit and matter, human and the divine. The vertical line is the spiritual axis, the soul's path of ascension. The horizontal, the earthly plane, the realm of human experience. Where the two lines meet is the heart, the point of balance, of integration, of alchemy. Another sacred symbol, the serpent. To the Druids and initiatic cultures, it did not simply represent evil as it was misunderstood later. It embodied hidden wisdom, rebirth, and the vital energy rising through the spine, the serpent fire, Kundalini. When awakened, it leads to spiritual illumination. The sun and the moon, two recurring symbols in sacred rituals. The sun, pure consciousness, the higher self, truth. The moon, the unconscious, mystery, the sacred feminine, and the eternal rhythm of the soul. Together, they reflect the harmony of opposites, reason and intuition, light and shadow, action and contemplation. There is also the seven-stepped ladder, found in the Rites of Mithras and in Masonic tradition, each step a level of consciousness, each ascent a triumph over fear, pride, desire, ignorance. To climb the ladder is to rise within and reunite with the divine. These symbols are not to be taken literally. They speak in a language beyond logic. To the unconscious mind, awakening what was forgotten and catalyzing inner transformation. That's why the ancients engraved them in temples, wore them as amulets, wove them into sacred cities. When the sincere seeker encounters a sacred symbol, they touch an ancient intelligence that speaks without words. They don't need to understand it all. They only need to feel. And when that feeling is pure, something stirs within. Something awakens. Something remembers. The ancient mysteries, with all their symbolic depth, were never created to entertain or impress. They existed and still exist in veiled form to serve a sublime purpose, to reconnect the human being with their divine essence. Every ritual, every symbol, every trial and teaching was, and still is, a tool for self-knowledge, for soul healing, and for the ascension of consciousness. When we look to these ancient traditions, we are not merely studying the past, we are gazing into a mirror of the future, a future where the spiritual and the scientific reunite, where knowledge is no longer separate from wisdom, and where true enlightenment is not a luxury, but a necessity. Your quest, your curiosity, your desire to understand beyond the surface have already placed you among those who walk the path of initiation. You don't need to belong to a secret order to live the transformation. The temple is within you. Initiation begins when you choose not to live on autopilot anymore, but in alignment with your inner truth. This knowledge belongs to no religion, no culture, no people. It belongs to the human soul. It is yours, and it is available to anyone who dares to look within, face their own labyrinths, and choose the light, even when darkness feels easier. This is the moment of choice. Will you remain asleep or begin your own journey of rebirth? The decision is yours, and the entire universe conspires when you say yes to your truth. Now, practical tips for the initiatic path. Meditate daily. Inner silence is the first portal to initiation. Study the symbols, choose one per week, and reflect on its meaning in your life. Practice truth. Speak, act, and feel with integrity. It purifies your energy. Align with nature's cycles. Observe the moon, the sun, the seasons. Everything is connected. Be open to mystery. The soul grows where logic ends. If this message touched your heart, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Mystic Authority. Leave a comment saying, "I choose to awaken." This isn't just engagement, it's a spiritual commitment to your journey. Remember, you are not alone. The same beings who once guided the initiates of the past now watch over you, awaiting your next step forward.